The storm had settled over Black Creek like a heavy, brooding sigh from the sky. Rain slicked the glass windows of Emily Brooks' Antiques and Curiosities, the street outside turning into a ribbon of silver reflections under dim street lamps. Inside, the ticking of an old grandfather clock was the only sound, not even the rain could quite drown it out. Emily Brooks stood alone behind the counter, the shop bathed in the golden glow of a solitary desk lamp. Shelves teemed with war medals, daguerreotypes, glass bottles, and dusty books that held stories she would never read. Tonight, her attention was on a parcel she had obtained at an estate sale that morning, a set of 5 intricately carved dinner knives, silver-plated and ornate, each handle engraved with delicate filigree patterns of vines and serpentine shapes. Emily traced her finger over one of the knives thoughtfully. Mrs. Abernathy's estate, she thought. A house steeped in mahogany and secrets. Her bidding had barely been contested. Funny, she'd thought these knives would practically sell themselves at the next flea market. Not anymore. A low rumble echoed across the street, and the shop's front door creaked, though Emily hadn't heard anyone pull it open. The bell above the door gave a soft chime, the sound out of place, too soft compared to the storm's howl. Emily lifted her gaze. A figure stood in the doorway. Water dripped from the hem of a cloak that looked stitched from the bark of a century-old tree. The silhouette was slight, almost fragile, but the presence was heavy, palpable. The figure stepped inside, moving slowly, almost reverently. Emily straightened. "Sorry, we're closed." Her voice was steady, though a chill crept up her spine. The figure paused. A voice echoed, but not aloud, it vibrated softly in her mind. "Is this a place where things change hands?" Emily's breath hitched. She clutched the counter. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is." The figure hooded its face, but Emily saw a faint glow reflected in the rain pooling on the floor. A hand emerged from under the cloak, long, thin fingers, skin pale like translucent pearl. The hand pointed straight at the knives. "Those. For a child." Emily frowned, her pulse ticking faster. "Knives for a child?" Her instincts tugged, but her voice came steady. "What sort of child needs knives like this?" The figure stepped forward. Slowly, the hood fell away. What she saw was neither human nor anything she could neatly name. A face smooth and luminous, with eyes large and liquid, reflecting the dim light like dark pools cast under starlight. No mouth moved, yet the words came clear. "A child hunted by those who will carve out the stars themselves to find him." The air seemed to hum. Emily's heart pounded against her ribs. The figure reached into its cloak and pulled out something that caught the light stones, though unlike any she'd ever seen. Iridescent jewels, each shifting in color, pulsing as though they were alive. Emily recoiled instinctively, then leaned in. There was beauty in them, a dangerous pull. "These will serve in exchange," the being said. "Though their value is not measured here." There was a pause, an unspoken question suspended between them. Emily stumbled for words. I don't know what this is. I don't even know who you are." "You still stand," the figure said. "That is answer enough." She looked at the knives again. They suddenly felt heavier, more significant. She lifted them gently and wrapped them in brown paper, her hands working almost on autopilot. When she reached forward to pass them over, the iridescent stones were already arranged in neat rows on the counter. "You are kind," the being said quietly, a hint of warmth in the voice, a shade of gratitude. Emily shook her head slightly. "No. I'm just a shopkeeper. Tonight, you are more." The being turned, drawing its cloak tightly. With a single step backward, it disappeared into the rain. The bell chimed one last time, and the door shut on its own. Emily stood motionless for several long seconds. The only sound was the quiet rasp of her own breath. She glanced at the stones, still pulsing gently, like tiny beating hearts, and whispered, "What have I just sold?" The morning sunlight slipped through the shop's dust-speckled windows, illuminating the stones still lying on her counter. Emily hadn't slept. She'd brewed coffee at sunrise, watching the sky bruise into amber and gray. The rain had passed, but something lingered in the air, a presence. She couldn't help but keep looking at the stones. they hummed faintly with an energy she couldn't name. Every part of her logical mind protested, tried to rebuild rational boundaries, but what she'd seen, she could not unsee. Just before noon, the bell chimed again. Emily looked up, half expecting someone to burst in asking about 19th century coinage or a military relic. Instead, a child pushed the door open with delicate hands. He couldn't have been more than 10. He was dressed in simple gray clothes, hair pale and fine as ash, threaded like silk beneath the sun's glow. His eyes were dark, deep like the stranger's. And in his hands was a wrapped bundle. "You are the keeper of knives," he said. Emily blinked. "I suppose I am. Did we meet last night?" He stepped closer. "Not I. But one who came in my name." The child set the bundle on the counter and unwrapped it. The same knives Emily had wrapped the night before lay inside, only now they were altered. Their silver gleamed with an inner light. The patterns etched in them had grown deeper, shifting like ivy under a summer wind. Emily stared with both awe and trepidation. "They are blades of the folded garden," the child said reverently. "Knives that have drunk the sun and the dark. They answer only to the blood that claims them." He touched one of the hilts. The metal shimmered under his finger. Emily swallowed. What child needs weapons like these? He lifted his gaze, eyes ancient beyond his years. "A hunted one." The air grew still. Time stretched and held its breath. "Salen," he said suddenly. "That is my name. And my brother is gone." Emily's heart twisted. "Gone?" "To the Crimson Veil. They come for the heirs of the garden. They take them to break the fold. To end us, to claim the blades." Her stomach tightened. This was no joke. No delusion, no matter how badly she wished it were. The shop trembled, then a guttural, low vibration, as if the building itself shuddered under pressure. The light flickered. The humming grew louder. Salen took a step back, eyes wide. "They have found me." Emily felt every instinct scream run. "Come on," she said, grabbing her coat without thinking. She shoved the stones in her pocket, they pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Salen snatched the knives, securing them to his back with some ancient, silent binding. They ran toward the back exit. But before they crossed the alley, a sound cracked the air like thunder. Emily turned toward the source and froze. A figure cloaked in shimmering crimson stepped from the darkness. Eyes like molten glass burned under its hood. It moved with terrifying grace, stepping toward them. Emily tried to back away. Her mind raced. "This can't be real, this can't be." Salen stood his ground. "You will not have her," he said. The crimson figure raised its arm, and with a whisper like metal tearing apart, the air ignited, lifting Emily off her feet. Pain seared through her senses, a blur of red, silver, and screaming wind. She heard Salen call her name. Then nothing. The rain began again. But Emily didn't feel it. She had stepped from her world into something she wasn't ready for, and the night claimed her. There was warmth. A radiance that felt like dawn distilled into touch. Emily's consciousness surfaced slowly, as though rising through layers of velvet water. When her eyes blinked open, she did not see the fluorescent lights of a hospital or the familiar shadows of her antique shop. Instead, she saw colors, hues shifting and dancing in the air like forgotten dreams. She lay upon a bed woven from strands of something not quite silk, not quite light. The fabrics glimmered as she stirred, reacting to her presence. Emily sat up, pressing a hand to her forehead. She expected pain, grogginess, confusion. Instead, she found clarity. Her mind felt sharp, bewildered, but clean. She took a breath. The air itself seemed alive, charged. She was in a hall, vast and cathedral-like. The ceiling rose high above her, lost in swirling mists of iridescent light. The walls shimmered, tapestries woven not of thread, but of living fragments, memories, perhaps, drifting like stardust across their surface. Thousands of tiny fractal patterns pulsed like distant galaxies. She was not alone. Standing in a half-circle around her were figures, tall, slender, armors dark as midnight but inlaid with silver that shone like constellations. Their faces were concealed by helms shaped like blooming blossoms. Silent, vigilant. And in the center, a woman. Emily didn't need an introduction. She was radiance incarnate. Her presence was a sovereign decree. Her hair flowed like spun moonlight, her skin opalescent, shifting colors of dawn and dusk. She wore a gown threaded with the essence of comets, shimmering with every movement. Her eyes, deep and ancient, regarded Emily not with disdain, but with quiet appraisal. Beside her, lying still on a bed of woven light, was Salen. Emily's breath caught. She stood, instinct overcoming both awe and uncertainty. Salen. He lives, said the queen. Her voice was music layered with meaning, soft, yet carrying resonance that echoed down to the marrow of Emily's bones. He was gravely wounded, the queen continued. But the garden will not let him fall. His bloodline cannot end on the veil between worlds. Emily swallowed, her throat tightening. Where am I? What is this place? The queen took a slow step toward her. This is the other veil, she said. It is neither your world nor wholly ours. It is a crossing, a space between the roots and the stars, between fate and choice. Emily looked around. How did I get here? You were pulled through the fold, the place where your fate was rewritten, bound by choice, bound by the stones you accepted. Emily looked down. She still wore her coat, the iridescent stones were in the pocket, pulsing faintly like they had a heartbeat of their own. You act with instinct, the queen said, observing her. You trade metal for magic, and ask no questions. You run beside a hunted child, knowing nothing of his war. You stand before the crimson veil without collapsing in fear. Emily let out a breath, half laugh, half shock. I'd say I didn't have much of a choice. A ghost of a smile flickered across the queen's lips. And that is what fascinates us. You believe there is no choice, yet you choose every time. Emily stepped closer to Salen. His face was calm and sleep now, pale but no longer strained. Is he safe now? For now. The crimson veil cannot cross freely into this place. But their reach grows. Their hunger does not wane. Emily shook her head. I don't understand. Who are they, really, from your perspective? The queen's gaze hardened. They are purgers. They seek to undo the garden and all who bloom from it. They believe the universe grows wild, too wild. They cannot control what they cannot consume. So they cut. They carve. They erase. Emily felt a coldness spread through her gut. They killed his brother. They killed many, the queen said. My eldest fell in the first season of the Veil's War. My second was taken before we learned the pattern. Salen is the last. The crimson veil wants him because he carries the bond. The garden blooms through him. Emily looked down at Salen. His small hand rested on the hilts of the 5 knives, which had been unwrapped and arranged carefully beside him. Bare metal, not of this world, gleamed like reflections of starlight captured in steel. He's just a child, Emily said, voice breaking. He is heir to a gift, the queen replied. And a burden. Emily wanted to scream, to demand answers, to rewind time, but what good were tears in a place made of wonder and war? Instead, she spoke quietly. You said I was pulled through the fold. Does that mean I can go back? The queen nodded. Yes. Your life is not tied to this war, not yet. Emily caught the nuance. Not yet. The queen's gaze softened. Every crossing carries cost. Every choice leaves a mark. The stones you carry now, iridescent hearts from the garden itself, bind you to its defense. That makes you known. You can return to your world, live out your days among your kind, but you cannot unsee. And the veil will not forget you. Emily felt the weight of the stones in her pocket. She was just an antiques dealer, yet here she was, standing in a realm built of living starlight, watching over a prince in exile. She turned to the queen. Why did he trust me? Why didn't he find someone stronger, someone wiser? The queen paused. Salen has known war since birth. He has known power. But what he needed was kindness. Trust. A heart that acts without hesitation when instinct calls. Emily blinked back a tear she hadn't realized was falling. The queen saw it and nodded, as if affirming something ancient and sacred. Those who trade their safety for a stranger's survival, the queen said, are rare. Even rarer in your world. Emily stared at her hands. They were trembling slightly. What do I do now? The queen stepped back. A glow pulsed in the air, and her guards shifted, forming a semicircle again. Light gathered at the far end of the hall, and from it, a doorway materialized. It shimmered with the color of dawn, with the softness of memory. You return, the queen said. You live your life. But when instinct tugs, do not ignore it. The fold remembers those who choose. Emily stepped toward the doorway. But before she crossed through, she turned back. Will I see him again? The queen's expression flickered, an ache hidden, a hope afraid to speak. Perhaps, she said finally. When cycles close and begin again. Emily nodded. She stepped through. Emily stumbled into her shop, breath-catching as though she'd come up from deep underwater. The air smelled of dust and old wood. It was early morning still, sunlight streaming through the glass windows, cutting through shelves filled with pleated lampshades and weathered book spines. The grandfather clock chimed the hour. Everything looked normal. She stood in the stillness for several seconds, feeling like time itself had paused just to welcome her home. She reached into her pocket. The stones were still there, warm to the touch. Still pulsing. Emily brushed a hand over them, then walked to the front door. She flipped the sign to open. It was time to collect stories again. But now, she wasn't just a keeper of objects. She was a keeper of promises. Of veils. Of blades that could bend fate. And somewhere, across the folds of the unseen, a young prince had been spared one more night. Emily took a deep breath. Let the garden watch.